To Geoffrey Hollands, Sherry Hewson, and special guest George Chisholm. That's tomorrow at 10. Back to tonight, and in half an hour, Brian Matthews. Guests in Round Midnight include Jennifer Wilson and Bruce Montague, talking about their roles in the play The Fling, and Patricia Angardi, who's appearing in The Highly Flavoured Ladies. Philip Bergson takes his regular look at the cinema world and the latest film releases. That's Round Midnight, after the news at 11. Now, it's 10:30.
This is the British Broadcasting Corporation. We present On the Air, a nostalgia quiz program covering over 60 years of radio history. The program is compiled and introduced by David Ryder.
Hello. You know, someone once said that the good thing about the past is that it's safe because it's already happened. Well, radio's past is safely locked away in the sound archives and the hallowed pages of the Radio Times. And we've gained admission to these treasure houses and have brought out a few bits and pieces of old programmes to see if our panel of distinguished broadcasters can recognise them. Now, it's difficult to define our first guest. He writes a bit, and he acts a bit, and he pops up on all sorts of quizzes and panel games. In the end, everything he does has something to do with words, two of his favourites being contract and cheque. It's John Junkin. Now, if you turn on Radio 2 in the early morning, you'll hear our next panellist discussing the dubious glories of Boggart Old Clough or wondering what has happened to the economic upturn. He's generated an enthusiastic following in his role as a slightly dyspeptic dawn chorus, Ray Moore. Now, although our next contestant is perhaps best known for his long career as a television newsreader, he has his roots in radio and is a regular performer on Radio 4 with the long-running chat show Start the Week and the musical delights of Baker's Dozen. Please welcome Richard Baker. "We must watch this programme very carefully," wrote the controller of the Light programme in a BBC memo, "lest it gets out of hand and becomes unmanageable. This is not a personality platform." When he was writing about family favourites, which, controllers' views apart, created its own stars. And out there in Hamburg, honing his natural broadcasting talent, was Cliff Michelmore. I thought we'd start this time with a round of dance bands from the days when dance bands were on the radio an awful lot. And I've sought out 4 dance band signature tunes for you to identify. John, which band attached itself to this tune?
You know, I think even as a child, I thought that was a slightly dramatic arrangement of it. I believe the gentleman himself played the muted trumpet. It was Roy Fox.
No, it wasn't Roy Fox.
Was it not?
No. Any offers?
As one who doesn't remember any of it at all, actually, David, it couldn't possibly be Ambrose.
Oh, yes,
the only name I can remember.
Was it? Good Lord.
He rejoiced in the glorious Christian name of Bert.
That's right.
Yes. Actually, by the late 40s, Ambrose was a bit discontent with the BBC, as witness this report in the Daily Mail.
You can no longer make a living out of the BBC in our business. I'm tired of the old excuse for small fees. But look at all the publicity you're getting, old boy. I stopped broadcasting 15 months ago because I was £30 out of pocket every time I went on the air.
Things don't change much, do they?
But it was a great thing, you see. You used to get all sorts of extras in the old days when I was on the third programme, you know, way back. We used to go to Glyndebourne Opera House and you used to have to wear your own dinner jacket. And there was tremendous competition to go to this place because every time you wore your own dinner jacket, you got 17 and 6. So opera was very, very popular.
Well, Ray, since you were so perspicacious with that first one, see if you can identify this one. It's a man who once led the BBC dance orchestra.
There are two names in my mind, and I'll probably pick the wrong one. I think it's Jack Payne.
2 marks. Richard, I think you shouldn't have too much trouble with this one.
Well, it's just the sort of music I used to smooch around the floor to when I was in my young days, which I just about remember. Gosh, all the bandies I can think of are going through my mind at the moment. Billy Turnent.
No.
Couldn't
Everyone in the audience is
Morris
shaking their heads.
Winstone.
Can I redeem myself?
Go on, then.
It was Roy Fox.
It was, yes.
Roy.
And this actually is a bit unusual, as the only recording I can find is a vocal version.
I come from Alabama with a banjo on my knee. I was going to Louisiana, my true love for to see. Oh, Susanna, oh, don't you cry for me. I've come from Alabama with a banjo on my knee.
Good gracious me. Troy's and his banjo.
Well, there you are. My suggestion no good at all.
Came from
actually.
Richard.
No.
Useless.
What my sister used to call Trows and his Banjoliers. No, it wasn't them.
It's very difficult because you've got to dissociate the words. They never played it with the vocal cords. Was it Lou Stone?
It was Lou Stone, another mark, yeah.
Very good.
Oh, that was very good, John.
Just out of interest, I looked up a Radio Times for September 1938 to see what sort of level of dance band broadcasts were on. There were none on Sundays. Couldn't have any dance bands on Sundays, no. But you've got quite a lot. There was three on Mondays on various networks. Joe Loss on Tuesday with Tommy Kinsman as well in the afternoon. Wednesday, Herman Daruski and his new Melody Rhythm Band. Maurice Winnick on Thursday. George Eric on Friday. On Saturday, you've got Henry Hall and Lou Stone. But the curious thing is, people think music radio is new. But I can tell you, in 1938, on a Monday, for instance, on the national programme, there was non-stop music from 11 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock in the evening. And then you've got the first news of the day.
That's a very good idea. It's about the right time for it.
Bring it back. Bring back Henry Hall. I was hoping you played Geraldo.
Oh, no,
because I have a great confession to make.
Go on.
On this very stage on which we're now sitting, I introduced the first ever square dance programme in the history of British broadcasting, and the band was Geraldo, and none of us had ever heard of a bloody square dance, including me. And there was one bit where I had all these words that were given to me by David Miller of beloved memory, and I had a bit left over when the band stopped, so I kept going. That's how much I knew about being a square dance caller.
Was it the last square dance programme the BBC ever did?
It's the last one I ever did.
Well, now we have a round which sets out to prove that the third programme can be more entertaining than you might think. I thought you might enjoy something from the third programme. So, John, what kind of occasion is this?
The opposers will talk of the third programme performing a socially valuable function. But does it? I can think of more socially valuable functions than providing programs like a talk on the ambiguous attitude of the Aino and the Gilliac towards the bear. and alcohol and society. An imaginary conversation between Socrates and Lady Astor.
Now then, John.
Sure. I'm profoundly sorry I missed both those programmes. I have no idea. It sounded like a young Robert Morley, but I wouldn't really know.
Yeah, it wasn't actually Robert Morley, but any guess as to what was going on?
Couldn't have been a Reith lecture, could it, about the third programme? No, it couldn't possibly have been that.
No.
Somebody setting up the third programme in some kind of way.
Well, what it was, in fact, was an Oxford and Cambridge Union Society's debate. And that was Jeremy Lever, this is in 1956, who proposed the motion that this House would abolish the third programme. Now, Ray, you're a noted academic, so can you identify this jolly performer?
Now, here's an example of the type of song where the singer informs you that no matter how much sin and vice and crime and corruption go on in the place where he comes from, nevertheless, it's just the best place in the world because it's home, you know?
No fellow could ignore the little girl next door. She sure looked sweet in her first evening gown. Now there's a charge for what she used to give for free in my hometown.
Does this have the remotest connection with Radio 3?
It was on the third programme in 1957.
Yeah, I think it obviously had a wonderful, distinctive voice. Tom Lehrer.
That's right, yes, 2 marks.
I find enormous joy listening to Radio 3, mainly for the humour. It's not a network noted for humour, but the unconscious kind of sanctimonious atmosphere in which it's conducted. The smallest slip can render it highly, highly funny. I think there was another morning, not longer than a month ago, and a man, as we all do on radio, had a terrible morning. The wrong records were going on at the wrong speed. Everything was crunching and breaking up. And this man made the fatal mistake of leaving the microphone on. And he said he was terribly sorry that things had gone wrong and there's records crashing about his ears. He said, but the children hadn't been sleeping. My wife's not been too well. And it descended into the realms of wonderful farce. It could only happen on Radio 3.
Yes, the more solemn it is, the more it's funny, isn't it? When
Indeed,
the whole thing goes wrong.
Yeah.
I remember in my early days, Sir Thomas Beecham, you know, the famous conductor, used to come to the studio a great deal, and he was very famous for saying exactly what he thought on the spur of the moment, to hell with the microphones, that sort of thing. He said exactly what he thought. And I was announcing some concert at the Dome in Brighton, and they were doing a Mozart piano concerto, and his wife was playing the piano part, and they got lost. There's no doubt about it at all. His answer was quite simple. He just turned to her and said, C major, you damn fool. Quick way of doing it, isn't it?
Well, Richard, as you were on the third programme yourself, I don't think you might have a bit of problem.
Probably will have a difficulty with it. But
no, it's in fact the nearest the third ever really got to situation comedy.
Here's your tea. I don't want any tea. You've got to have it. It's 2:15, Director General's orders. 1 lump of saccharin. You are permanent staff, aren't you?
No,
I thought so. Well, a man must live. I'm an archaeologist, really. Came here because there was evidence of a Roman temple under Portland Place, but once I got in, I never left. Come in and help me with these repeats, will you?
Repeats?
Of all the things on the air tonight.
But if they haven't been done yet, what is there to repeat?
Don't ask naive questions. Just sit at a desk and drink your tea. That proves you're permanent staff.
I absolutely don't know what it's called. It is one of the humorous things. But it wasn't Potter, was it?
No, not Potter.
And it wasn't a thing called Emily Butter, was it?
No, not Emily Butter.
That was a funny thing.
Did you get a mark for one of the characters in the clip?
All right, Raymond, I'll give you a mark.
One was Ustinov.
One was Ustinov, that's right. Yes.
Well, then the other one must be Jones.
Peter Jones, it must be.
Yes,
oh,
right.
really?
Yes, it was a programme they did in 1956 called In Third Gear, which followed on their In All Directions series on the Home Service.
Really?
Oh.
God. Well, it was after my time.
Oh, yes.
It was, actually.
Yes,
Just.
right. Just, yeah. Now, Cliff, here we have a bit of refined vulgarity passing as sophistication.
Listen, Mr. Beak. I'll tell you something about Dick Shoin I've never told anybody. Richard Shoin is the only man, alive or dead, who can ever have been said to have interfered with my basic tone roll. Look, Mr. Beat, can you turn over?
Turn over?
Music. There's a piece of mine I always associate with old Dick Shoin. I'll play it for you, so help me.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It's Emily...
No,
not Emily.
Not quite.
Not Emily.
What she wrote.
Yeah, that's right.
But what was her name? Just being repeated, this thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
Hilda Tablet.
Hilda Tablet.
Private Life of Hilda Tablet. Hilda Tablet was played by Mary O'Farrell.
Mary O'Farrell,
yes.
yeah. That one.
Who, in an interview many years ago, said that she was once in danger of getting typecast.
Queens used to be my speciality. If ever a script popped up with Queen Elizabeth or Victoria or Mary, Queen of Scots in it, I was bound to get it. I seemed to spend an awful lot of my time spurring people on against armadas and not being amused. They started calling me Queenie around the studios.
The next round is called The Name's the Same, and this round features people with the same surname. So once you've got the first one, the rest should follow fairly easily. It says here. John, can you put a name to this well-known voice?
One of the things that happened was we had a chap playing the records. Naturally, I was just commenting between the records. And I finished up by saying one night, well, it's very late. It's getting on 12 o'clock. I said, now, did they tell me to put the cat out, or was it Stuart Hibbard? I can't remember now. One or the other. And the boy on the gramophone thing played a cat record. He had a cat on a record. And he played one, meow, meow. And that's how this cat started.
Is that the gentleman who started his career with our dance bands?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then went on Jack Jackson?
2 marks. What the cat was called?
Tiddles.
Tiddles, yes. Extra mark for Tiddles, John. Yeah, that's right. Yes. I actually found the record in the gramophone library. It's an EMI record, and it still exists, of the original. It's a bit scratched now, because the Tiddles have been put out an awful lot. But it does exist. Now, Ray, this is someone from a different part of the entertainment business.
I think it is that the film industry has basically moved away from Hollywood, and the films that are made now, which are made all over the world, in a variety of places, are made in the main by a newer breed of filmmakers who are not necessarily raised in the studio system that Hollywood founded. And I think they have always, in a curious way, recognized acting throughout the sort of years of the Oscar Awards. But there were, I think, undoubtedly years when, the prize went to whoever had the most votes in the biggest studio.
Now, it's a Jackson, so can you fill in the Christian name for me?
Yes, she's a lady I know very well. She doesn't know me from Adam. She goes in our greengrocers and lives, as far as I can see, on a diet of avocados. Never buys anything else in her life. It's Glenda, of course.
That's right. Glenda Jackson, yeah. That interview recorded in 1971 when she'd won the Oscar for her performance in Women in Love. Now, Richard, you have a Jackson, and this man is speaking in tribute to Kathleen Garskadden.
I used to do odd broadcasts with Kathleen on the side, and I had a job of work. I was going to be an engineer. And out of the blue, Kathleen wrote a letter to me saying, ring me up tonight, I've got something to tell you. And then she said to me, they've written from London asking for a Scots type for a film, and I suggested you for it. Why don't you go down and see them anyway? I don't know if it'll come to anything and all that sort of thing, but I was lucky and I got it. It was a thing called The Foreman Went to France. So thanks to Kathleen, I started off in film.
Well, he's a wonderful actor. He really deserves better than to be identified always with one particular part as the butler in Upstairs, Downstairs. Wonderful, wonderful actor, but done a tremendous lot of other marvellous things. Gordon Jackson.
That's right, it is.
You haven't said who Kathleen Garskadden
no,
was.
I was just about to say.
Because
Yes.
Kathleen Garskadden is a real bit of radio history.
Right.
Kathleen Garskadden ran children's programs in Scotland. And when I used to produce a children's television program, and I used to go and get all the people, called All Your Own, introduced by Hugh Weldon, I was once told to go to Glasgow with Aunt Kathleen. And I arrived and to do these auditions. And Kathleen Garskadden, she was quite small, and she sat there and she said, I have all the names of the people here, and I've underlined the ones you are going to choose.
She had a beautifully clear speaking voice, because I used to hear her on
wonderful.
Regional Round. That programme was recorded actually in 1960 when she retired, and she recently celebrated her 90th birthday.
That's right. And a lovely, lovely lady. And Children's Hour and children's programmes are indebted to a lovely lady.
Yeah, she was super. Now then, I have one Jackson for you, Cliff, and it is possible that you might have interviewed this man.
I love the post office. I've spent the whole of my life in the post office. We don't want to destroy the post office or the postal services. What we would like to see, however, is that our members receive the same as other people, because otherwise we will find that we have less wage than other people have. And when this happened last time, We finished up not being able to do the proper number of deliveries, the proper numbers of collections, and in fact some people got no deliveries some days in some towns.
Whenever you interviewed him, the trouble was that you smiled all the time. You giggled, simply because those enormous moustaches tickled you under the ear. None other than Tom.
Tom Jackson, yes.
Of the Post Office.
Now we're going to turn to some classic radio comedy. We have 4 characters from series which I'd like to identify, and I'd like you to name the character and the performer. So, John, this one takes us back to 1948.
Every time I see you at the club, I think of... Nice bunch of celery? No, take no notice of Mr. Coster, Miss Briscoe. He's just an old... Bag of lard? Sometimes, you see, when I see you, I feel quite speechless, Miss Briscoe. I feel almost as if I was in the presence of... Well, as if I was about to be presented to... Oh, I say I am a fool.
No, I don't know. Hey, that was much binding in the marsh.
You don't get a mark for the programme, but it was, yeah.
Character was played by Maurice Denham.
A mark for Maurice Denham?
And his name was...
Oh, he's dragging it.
Did you know that Maurice Denham was Tommy Handley's first char lady?
Yes.
He said, desperately seeking time.
Lola Tickle. Any offers from the other side of the room?
Squadron leader Beep.
You're making him up, Richard.
Totally. Yes,
it was Dudley Davenport.
Dudley Davenport.
Dudley Davenport. Yeah.
That's how like forgive me, Morris.
Right, now, Ray, it's your turn, and see if you can identify this country character.
I think the answer lies in the soil. You can't beat the country for relaxing. At the end of a day's good honest toil, you go indoors to the warmth of a log fire to be greeted by your loved one. A good meal, stimulating conversation, and an early night. Of course, the rude awakening comes when you have to get up about 4 o'clock in the morning.
That's when work starts again.
No, that's when I have to go home.
Yeah, that was one of the greatest classic series of all time. I don't know whether it was Beyond Our Ken or...
It was like Beyond Our Ken.
It was Beyond Our Ken. Well, it was obviously Kenneth Williams. I think the character was Sid Rumpole.
No, not Sid Rumpole. Mark for Kenneth Williams. The character, though, was not Sid Rumpole. That came up in Round the Horn, Sid Rumpole.
Yeah.
The answer is Arthur Fallowfield. A character devised by Eric Merriman and Barry Took, based on the sort of agricultural personalities like Ralph Whiteman and A.G. Street, who used to pop up on things like Any Questions. Now, Richard, here are a couple wandering in the desert. Who is the old lady?
I told you, Henry, I told you the tide was out, Henry. Not going back home without having a paddle. Listen, Henry, the man will want another threepence for this deck here, buddy. Excuse me? I don't want a donkey ride.
Yes, well, it's the Goons, isn't it?
Yeah.
I can do that one. And it was, I think Peter Sellers is the old...
No, not as the old lady. Not Peter Sellers.
Milligan.
No. Milligan, yes, a mark. And the name of the old lady?
Minnie Bannister.
Oh, yes.
Minnie Bannister, yes.
Minnie Bannister. And Spike used to perform Minnie Bannister by clenching the skin round his Adam's apple and striking himself there at the same time, which produced the noise, which was, Henry! And it's very painful to do.
Yes, that's right. That was from an episode of The Goon Show broadcast in 1955 called Under Two Floorboards. When I was having a look at a few files recently, I came up against some interesting correspondence that Spike had with the BBC. You know what the BBC are like with their correspondence. He had a letter in 1955 telling him that as the Camden Theatre, which they used to record the Goon Show, wasn't available, he said it would be necessary to share the Garrick Theatre with Take It From Here, and the recording would be at 3:45 in the afternoon. Well, Spike didn't care for this, and he wrote back and said, I am available at this time. I would like to add a note, though. Anybody who comes to hear a show at 3:45 on a Sunday afternoon must be A, without a home, B, gormless. Psychologically, it is a bad time to perform a comedy show. It is like doing Rigoletto in the middle of Bond Street, but apparently opinion doesn't matter anymore. Now, he got a reply to that from a marvellous man called Pat Newman. He used to be the Variety booking manager and wrote wonderful letters. Dear sir, in re yours of the 22nd inst... Oh, heavens no, I've met you somewhere before. Let me start again. Dear Spike, in your letter, it would surely have been better at A to say homeless, which goes much better with gormless, Maybe you should book the artists and I should write the scripts. I'm sure we are jolly sorry, but needs must, and we are so desperately short of studios that I think it's more than likely that our next production of Rigoletto will be done from the middle of Bond Street.
You're a very funny man.
Very good. That's right. And back came a letter, in fact, not from Spike, but from Beryl Virtue. And it says, Spike has asked me to thank you for your letter and tell you that you win. Also, would you keep his name in mind for tickets for Rigoletto when it's performed in
The only thing funnier than the letters that Pat Newman wrote were the fees he offered you.
But he wrote such amusing letters you didn't really mind, I think. Yes, I think there's a programme to be got out of his letters, actually. There's a lot of fun in there. Most unlike BBC letters, they really are. Finally, Cliff, this is from a comedy classic of the 1970s.
Look at this door. All the doors in this spacecraft have a cheerful and sunny disposition. It is their pleasure to open for you and their satisfaction to close again with the knowledge of a job well done. Hectful, isn't it? Come on. I've been ordered to take you up to the bridge. Here I am, brain the size of a planet, and they tell me to take you up to the bridge. Call that job satisfaction, because I don't. You watch this door. It's about to open again. I can tell by the intolerable air of smugness it suddenly generates.
That we can do.
Not a discussion.
Is it The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
Yes, that's the programme.
That's the programme.
What about the rest of the answer? What was the character and who was the performer?
Was it Marvin, the paranoid android?
It was, Mark Perret, yeah. And the actor, any guesses? Or even anybody knows?
He's a very, very famous actor whose name I can't think of now.
Well, try saying Stephen Moore, and you'll get it there. You see, Stephen Moore.
I knew it rang a bell somewhere.
Yeah, Marvin, the paranoid android. Now it's time to fiddle with the score sheet, so while you wait for the results, here's another of radio's less golden moments. This is an enlightening scientific discourse by a man called Henry Hatch, in which he reaches a surprising conclusion about the nature of sound.
If we strike the note middle C on the piano, which is roughly 261 vibrations per second, and then play the same note on a violin, well, they don't sound quite the same.
Well, next week I'll be...
13th, isn't it?
Yes, that's right.
Next week I'll be hitting my head with a spanner to see if you can tell the difference between that and the Anvil Chorus. Well, now here we have the result. This is a tremendously exciting moment. A great wave of apathy sweeps over the studio. And the winner this week, Ray Moore. Well, he gets this week's highly desirable prize, the exclusive use for 1 month of Marvin the Paranoid Android, who will grumble at you for 24 hours a day. It makes an acceptable wife substitute. Doesn't get headaches, only pains in the electrodes. Well, thank you, everybody. And the panel actually volunteered to come back and do it properly in a few weeks' time. And next week I'll be dusting down a bit more of radio's bric-a-brac. And this is where On the Air goes off the air. Goodbye.
That was On the Air, a radio nostalgia quiz devised and chaired by David Ryder. Taking part were John Junkin, Ray Moore, Richard Baker and Cliff Michelmore. The announcer was me, Richard Clegg, and the programme, which was recorded, was produced by Richard Edith.
And strolling down radio's memory lane next week will be Roy Hudd, Ian Messiter, Norman Painting and Alan Simpson. That's On the Air at 10:30 next Tuesday. Tomorrow evening on Radio 2, Folk on 2 between 7 and 8:30 comes from Canada, where Jim Lloyd reports from the Mariposa Folk Festival and from the CBC studios in Toronto. Now in a couple of minutes, Brian Matthews sets out round midnight. Then at 1 o'clock, your Wednesday morning night ride man is Charles Nove.
Radio 2.
It's 11 o'clock and James Alexander Gordon's at the news desk.
The South Africans say they've killed nearly 200 black guerrillas and Angolan soldiers during a raid into southern Angola. According to the South African statement, the guerrillas belong to SWAPO, the liberation organization which is fighting to end South African control of Namibia. Graham Leach reports.
The South African-led security forces in Namibia said that during a follow-up operation into southern Angola, their units were ambushed by SWAPO guerrillas and Angolan army soldiers. 190 SWAPO men and Angolan troops had been killed, with one injury on the South African side. The announcement contained no details of the time or location of the clash. There's recently been a substantial build-up of Angolan and Cuban forces supported by Soviet technicians in southern Angola in a bid to launch an attack on the town of Jamba, the headquarters of the anti-government UNITA movement, which is backed by South Africa.
President Reagan has said that the climate is now favorable for an historic superpower agreement on arms. He was speaking after American and Soviet arms negotiators began a special meeting in Geneva with the announcement that the Americans were making concessions on intermediate-range missiles.